Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. Iran set to resume nuclear talks with Britain, France and Germany this week. At least 19 killed and dozens injured after a military jet crashes into a school campus in Bangladesh. Susha Global Media Forum concludes in Azerbaijan, warning of rising disinformation threats. Thank you for tuning in. Iran is set to resume nuclear talks with Britain, France and Germany on Friday in Istanbul. The negotiations, initiated by the three European signatories of the original nuclear deal Tehran struck with world powers in 2015, aim to revive the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and reduce tensions surrounding Iran's nuclear activities. Our Tura Shiralilu has more in Tehran.
The European Troika of Germany, France and the United Kingdom are confirmed to meet Iranian negotiators in Istanbul for the first time after the 24th June ceasefire in the 12-day war on Iran by Israel and US. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai confirmed on Monday that the meeting will be held at the level of deputy foreign ministers and that EU foreign policy deputy chief will also take part in the Istanbul discussions. The spokesman did not announce the date of the meeting in Turkey, but said it will discuss settlement of differences and Iran's serious demand to remove sanctions. The E3 has threatened to call for fast return or snapback of UN sanctions in October, which were terminated by the resolution 2231 in 2015, endorsing the nuclear agreement or JCPOA reached the same year in Vienna between Iran on one side and the E3 plus China, Russia and US on the other. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a post on his X account on Sunday, said he sent a letter to UN Secretary General, Chair State of the Security Council, and EU Foreign Policy Chief, outlining why the E3 lacks legal, political, and moral standing to invoke the snapback mechanism. He said, the E3 cannot and shall not be allowed to undermine the credibility of the UN Security Council by abusing a resolution to which they themselves have not been committed. Tura Shiralilu, reporting for AnewZ TV, Tehran.
Still in Iran, the Foreign Ministry confirmed a trilateral meeting with Russia and China is set for Tuesday in Tehran on the country's nuclear program and the risk of UN sanctions being reimposed under the so-called snapback mechanism. The ministry spokesperson referred to UN Security Council's permanent members, Russia and China, as close allies of Tehran with shared views and strong ties. He also said that given the current circumstances, Iran has no plans to hold talks with the United States. Foreign ministers of about 20 European countries, as well as Japan, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, and the EU Commissioner for Equality have issued a joint statement saying the war in Gaza must end now and Israel must comply with international law. The statement said the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached new depths and condemned the, quote, drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children, seeking to meet their most basic needs of water and food. The statement came as Israel launched ground operations in the city of Deir al-Balah in central Gaza for the first time in the 21-month-old war in the Strip. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is facing mounting pressure after his coalition lost its majority in the upper house after Saturday's election. Despite the setback, Ishiba says he has no plans to resign.
Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he will remain in office after his ruling coalition suffered a heavy defeat in the upper house election on Saturday. The Liberal Democratic Party and its partner Komeito failed to secure the 50 seats needed to retain their majority. The loss deepens Ishiba's political troubles, coming less than a year after his coalition also lost control of the more powerful lower house. His government now becomes Japan's first minority administration in more than 3 decades. The result is widely seen as a rebuke from voters who are struggling with the rising cost of living, particularly with food prices such as rice. A string of political scandals has also weakened public trust in the Liberal Democratic Party.
I think the ruling party had great opportunities, such as Trump's outrage and the soaring rice prices. Had the ruling party resolved even one of these issues, their approval rate would have gone up, but we didn't feel anything, and it seems like the US would continue to push us around.
I think the government should tax people in a more effective way. It should tax the people who are earning a lot. People with lower incomes should not suffer.
Opposition parties, especially the Constitutional Democratic Party, led by the former Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda, made gains. But it's the rise of smaller far-right parties, such as Sanseito, that's drawing attention. Their anti-immigration, ultra-nationalist messaging appears to have cut into the Liberal Party's more traditional base. Despite calls for his resignation, Ishiba says his priority is guiding Japan through critical trade talks with the United States, with a deadline looming next month. But with internal party rivals waiting in the wings and voter confidence shaken, questions remain over how long Ishiba can hold on.
At least 19 people were killed and more than 160 injured after a Bangladeshi Air Force training jet crashed into a school campus in the capital, Dhaka. The F-7 jet crashed into the Milestone School and College in the suburb of Uttara, causing a blaze that tore through the 2-story building. The injured were transferred to nearby hospitals as emergency teams were continuing rescue operations at the scene. The government has promised a full investigation. China and the European Union are edging closer to a new electric vehicle trade framework, with ongoing talks aimed at setting a minimum export price for Chinese EVs. Our Manur Magdoum has more in Beijing.
China and the European Union appear to be entering a new phase in their EV trade relationship as negotiations move steadily towards a structured pricing system. The talks focused on introducing a minimum export price mechanism signal a potential shift from EU's previous strategy of imposing high tariffs on Chinese imports. Tariffs that were imposed following accusations of market distortion and state subsidies. Trade tensions between Brussels and Beijing have simmered for over a year, with the EU voicing concerns that unfair competition from Chinese EV giants with extensive state support would destabilize the domestic automotive industry. In response, the European Commission announced additional duties on Chinese EV imports in the middle of last year, drawing sharp criticism from China, which called these measures protectionist and retaliated with threats of counter tariffs on European luxury goods and agricultural products. Now, instead of allowing this dispute to turn into a full-blown trade war, both sides are working on a mutually acceptable framework while preserving consumer access to affordable green technology. The proposed pricing would set a floor price for Chinese EVs entering the European market in an effort to prevent dumping practices and avoid blanket tariff measures. This turn comes amid a mounting pressure from European leaders and automakers to de-escalate the conflict and restore a stable investment climate. Meanwhile, Chinese officials are eager to secure continued access to lucrative European market without further straining diplomatic ties and geopolitical relations. With the technical framework nearly finalized, the remaining obstacle is securing political approval from the EU, which is an issue that may be resolved at the upcoming summit in Beijing. Manu Mafoon, AnewZ, Beijing.
Thousands of cars meant for the United States are now sitting idle in one of Europe's busiest ports. New U.S. tariffs have triggered a sharp drop in vehicle exports from Belgium, sparking uncertainty for automakers.
At the port of Antwerp-Bruges in Belgium, thousands of US-bound cars sit idle, caught in a crossfire of a growing trade dispute. The port is packed with unsold vehicles, as exporters scramble to respond to fresh tariffs announced by President Donald Trump. The managing director of international car operators say that shipments to the US have already dropped 15% this year.
It has to do with geopolitics, it has to do with tariffs, it has to do with a lot of elements, also a changing dealership relationship, which creates a demand, in fact, on additional capacity on the terminal.
His organisation handled over 2 million cars last year, and of those around 121,000 were US bound, numbers which are now at risk with more tariffs looming in from August the 1st.
Shipping lines are preparing themselves, if there would be a higher tariff to the US, to export as much as possible for the end of this month. It's a little bit, it's unclear, it really is unclear, and we cannot predict anything at this moment.
Brussels is urging Washington to reconsider as Europe braces for a possible 30% tariff hike. For now, the vehicles and the industry wait.
As another week of trade negotiations between the United States and the European Union is upon us, we're talking on the latest with international business consultant Jorge Costa Oliveira joining us from Lisbon. Welcome, thank you so much for joining us. Now, some 10 days ahead of the August 1st deadline, EU negotiators are engaging with their US counterparts. Donald Trump earlier warned he would hit the EU with a 30% tariff on most of its exports if a deal isn't reached. Based on everything we've seen so far, would you say a deal is likely to happen?
Well, I don't think there will be a deal, a complete deal, as in all the other cases. It will be similar to the other cases. I think although we are speaking about deals, in reality, what we can expect is a framework of a deal. The general terms and conditions for the deal. That's what was done with the UK. And we must understand that to do a trade deal, a complete trade deal, takes many months, often years. And Trump wants this to go fast, and in reality, he uses this as a tool of geoeconomics and political pressure. So, do I think that there will be an agreement? Yes. A pre-agreement? Yes. I think there will be, because both sides have a lot to lose, especially the US, to be fair.
We've heard the US Commerce Secretary, sorry for interrupting you, over the weekend saying he's confident a deal will be struck. Do you see Brussels agreeing to less favorable conditions, even in this outline, in this framework, to avoid the tariffs?
Well, the general idea that the Trump administration passes is that any country, any economic bloc that has a surplus in terms of the trade balance needs to be punished somehow with a higher tariff. But if the higher the tariff, the more likely it is that that provokes inflation in the US. And the European Union is still the main economic partner of the United States. So in reality, and that's why I don't think that there will be a very high tariff imposed on European products, apart from several of which already have been subject to that, like steel and aluminum. But for the other products, I don't think that we're going to see high tariffs. It doesn't mean that they are matched, but I also don't think that the United States want to impose a very different structure, because if suppose that they put it 15% or 20%, it will have a reasonable impact in terms of inflation. And the higher the inflation is, the higher the interest rates are inside the United States, which is bad for the economy. And it's also bad for the refinancing of the United States public debt, which is 36 trillion, and 9 trillion need to be refinanced this year. So yes, I don't think the United States is going to actually impose high tariffs. I think it's going to negotiate. And I would say that Trump needs to save face at this stage. But I don't think that there will be any significant imposition of high tariffs to Europe.
George, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insight.
A pleasure.
In other news, U.S. Senator Adam Schiff is once again in President Donald Trump's crosshairs, facing accusations related to property loans. As the allegations make headlines, Schiff is framing them as a distraction from larger issues.
California Senator Adam Schiff is facing renewed scrutiny after President Donald Trump accused him of mortgage fraud. Schiff declined to address these allegations directly. In a recent Truth Social post, President Trump called the senator a thief. U.S. leader claimed that Schiff should be prosecuted, just like they tried to prosecute him. Previously speaking via Truth Social, Trump claimed that Schiff misled mortgage lenders by listing his Maryland home as his primary residence. Despite serving as a congressman from California, according to Trump, Schiff tried to secure better loan terms. The president called Schiff a crook and alleged a pattern of misrepresentation starting in 2009, continuing through 2020. According to a memo reviewed by the Los Angeles Times, a Fannie Mae investigation found that Schiff and his wife had, at various times, listed different properties. The memo concluded that the couple showed a sustained pattern of possible occupancy misrepresentation. When approached by Fox News Digital on Capitol Hill, Schiff declined to respond to the accusations and simply said, "Have a nice day."
Trump posted this on social media, accusing me of crimes and saying...
In a video statement posted to YouTube, Schiff dismissed the claims as politically motivated. Schiff called the accusations an act of political retaliation. The congressman, who led Trump's first impeachment, was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2024 after serving 12 terms in the House.
More than 3 years after fleeing the Taliban following their return to power, dozens of Afghan evacuees in the United Arab Emirates are now being returned to Afghanistan, some reportedly against their will. Our Tamim Bahez has more on that in Kabul.
According to a State Department cable obtained by Reuters, the UAE had already begun deporting Afghan evacuees days before US President Donald Trump vowed to step in and save them. The internal cable shows that in a July 10 meeting with US officials, a senior Emirati official, Salim Al-Zaabi, confirmed 2 Afghan families had already been sent back to Kabul. The UAE told Washington it would return the remaining 25 individuals by July 20, effectively ending what it called a temporary humanitarian arrangement. The UAE hosted thousands of Afghans since 2021 at a facility called Emirates Humanitarian City. Most have since been resettled, but about 30 remain stuck, their future uncertain. On Sunday, Trump responded to media reports about their situation with a post on Truth Social, saying he would try to save them starting right now. But Reuters notes by then the deportation were already underway. UAE officials claim the 2 families who returned earlier this month did so voluntarily, saying they were tired of waiting. But Reuters reports that 2 sources close to the situation dispute this, alleging that families were pressured to either sign so-called voluntary deportation papers or face arrest and forced removal. As of now, it's unclear if the remaining individuals have already been deported. The US State Department, the White House, the UAE authorities, and the de facto Afghan authorities have yet to comment publicly. This is Tamim Bahez in Kabul for AnewZ.
Media literacy, information security, and AI's role in truth. In the final day of Susha Global Forum, debates hit hard. Panelists drove home a key message. Media literacy isn't optional. It's a 21st century survival skill. It's not just about consuming news, but critically evaluating and questioning it.
Day 3 of the 3rd Susha Global Media Forum began with AnewZ in the spotlight. Deputy Editor-in-Chief Orkan Amashov opened the day, unveiling the new opinion section on the AnewZ website. The platform aims to encourage clear judgment, strong analysis, and open debate. The session also featured Destination Susha, a documentary produced by AnewZ earlier this year. The session drew a packed audience of journalists, delegates, and media executives, underlining AnewZ's growing role in global media debates.
Following this, the forum turned its focus to broader global issues at the core of today's agenda: media literacy, information security, and the AI's growing grip on truth. Media literacy is no longer optional. It's the foundational literacy of the 21st century. It should begin in classrooms and extend into newsrooms.
The goal? To help people question what they see, think critically, and understand different views. Panelists drew compelling parallels between how we read the news and how we perceive the world. Another session focused on journalism in the age of AI. The discussion explored how artificial intelligence is changing newsrooms. Speakers warned of the risks, reminding that truth, accuracy, and accountability must not be lost to automation.
As journalists, we must always move forward, and not just drift, but progress thoughtfully. We need to seek common ground, even amid disagreements. We should help the state arrive at the right solutions and empower our audience to think in a broader, more holistic way, not just about today or tomorrow, but beyond. It's our duty to look out for future generations and to prioritize the interests of the state. We see that Azerbaijan is on the right path. Going forward, many issues will become easier to resolve. As journalists, we must consider every matter, understand the essence of our work. We serve the people and uphold the interests of the state.
We all realize that there are some serious challenges out there. Technology is moving so fast that no human can keep up with it, and that includes AI. So what do? Well, we need to learn how to use it, how to work with it, how to recognize the challenges, how to recognize disinformation, and we all need to be educated. I think that was a great theme that came out, and I agree with that. All of us are now undereducated because technology has moved faster than anyone could have imagined.
Artificial intelligence has been out there for over 3 years now, but I think it's fair to say that right now in 2025 it has become more integrated into the media ecosystem, and this is primarily why this forum, the third global Susha Media Forum, has been designated to AI and media literacy, because I believe that it's of paramount importance for us journalists, for media professionals to discuss this, because while there are many opportunities within AI, I think it also poses a lot of threats. So I think this platform serves as an opportunity for journalists, for media professionals, for policymakers to come together and to discuss all of these issues.
Social media was also in the spotlight. A panel looked at how new online platforms affect public trust in journalism. The message was clear: rebuilding trust is now a key mission for media. As the forum wraps up, Susha remains true to its role, preserving history while building platforms for the future.
At the Susha Global Media Forum, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev once again demanded accountability for the shooting of the Azal airliner over Russian airspace that resulted in a crash, claiming 38 lives in December last year. He announced preparations are underway to bring the matter to international courts. Joining us to briefly talk on this is international lawyer Javid Rahimli, coming to us from London. Welcome, thank you so much for being with us. Now, Baku insists that Moscow needs to admit guilt, punish those responsible, and compensate the families of the victims as well as the airline. If this is not met, what are the available litigation options on the international level?
Thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, available international litigation options are very limited. One is under the Chicago Convention, because according to the Chicago Convention Article 3 attacking a civilian aircraft is restricted, and it is equal to the violation of the mentioned convention, and it requires that before initiating an arbitration or application to the Council of the International Civil Aviation Organization, parties should negotiate for subsequent enough time. And in our case, Azerbaijan has already been negotiating with Russia for over 7 months, asking for any conclusions regarding the ongoing investigations in Russia. But over the 7 months, Azerbaijan has not gotten any substantial information regarding the investigations. There is no compensation to the families. There is no official acknowledgement of the international wrongful act. And also, after the President Ilham Aliyev's speech regarding the potential application to international courts, Russian officials also implied that they are open to wait the results of the international legal proceedings. First, Azerbaijan can initiate the application to the International Convention, International Civil Aviation Organization Council, and after the decision of the Council, if parties do not agree with the final decision, they can appeal the decision to the International Court of Justice. Another forum would be the arbitration, because under the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism, and acts against the civil aircraft is also one of the applicable acts which might be brought before the regarding arbitration under that convention. And if no agreement is reached how to conduct arbitration, parties can refer the dispute to the ICJ. Another option could be the interstate application before the European Court of Human Rights, but because Russia has recently left the convention, it wouldn't be applicable in our issue, lacking the jurisdiction. And for now, the only available option is the convention, under the Chicago Convention, International Civil Aviation Organizations Council.
And how long would you say such a case might take?
I would assume, from my understanding, is that those cases will take at least 5 years. Right now, the recent decision was about the Malaysia Airlines, which took almost 10 years for a final decision to conclude, because that was the first decision of its kind in the 80 years of the history of the International Civil Aviation Organizations Council. Maybe because it was the first decision to make on the merits, it took that much time, but we can expect from 5 to 10 years for such decision to conclude in Azerbaijan Airlines dispute.
And finally, what can the court order Russia to do?
So the International Civil Aviation Organizations Councils aren't able to issue compensation. The main possible outcome would be the acknowledgement of the international wrongful act, which will be the violation of the Chicago Convention. And after that decision, Azerbaijan may apply to the International Court of Justice, which is also very limited. But if Azerbaijan gets the decision from the Civil Aviation Organization Council that Russia committed international wrongful act, then the families of the victims, they can individually apply to the domestic courts around the world to seek compensation.
Javed, thank you so much for joining us and clearing this up.
Thank you very much.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the opening of the Zangazur corridor could revitalize trade and promote cooperation across the region. Speaking to reporters on his return from Northern Cyprus, Erdogan emphasized that the corridor would benefit not only Azerbaijan, Armenia and Turkey, but also other neighboring countries. He described the project as a key geo-economic link that could connect the region with wider global markets. Armenia will build a 42-kilometer railway in Sunnik province as part of the Zangazur corridor only after reaching an agreement with Azerbaijan, according to Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's spokesperson Nazeli Bagdasaryan. She said the railway cannot operate even for domestic transport in Armenia unless a deal is in place. Preparatory work has already started, including a new road to Zangazur village, which is currently connected via the old railway line. Bagdasaryan added that Armenia supports reopening all transport routes with neighboring countries. In Azerbaijan, the SOCAR Carbomide plant, one of the country's largest non-oil industrial projects, is rapidly expanding its export footprint. Built to reduce dependence on imported fertilizers and boost non-oil exports, the facility is now sending products to more than 15 countries, including the United States, Brazil, and India.
At the heart of Azerbaijan's industrial city of Sumgayit, the SOCAR Carbomide plant is operating at full capacity, annually transforming 435 million cubic meters of natural gas into a valuable export, nitrogen-based fertilizer. With an annual production potential of 650 to 660,000 tons, the plant surpassed 652,000 tons last year and is on track to exceed that figure in 2025. Built with cutting-edge European and Korean technology, the facility has become a symbol of Azerbaijan's shift toward value-added, non-oil exports.
Our urea is exported to more than 15 countries, from Turkey and Georgia to Brazil and the US. Even India, one of the world's top fertilizer producers, is among our clients. This shows the global competitiveness of our product.
Originally designed with 70% of output intended for export, the plant now fulfills nearly all of Azerbaijan's domestic urea demand, freeing the country from imports and saving millions in foreign currency. Journalists touring the facility during a special media day held on Monday, marking the 150th anniversary of Azerbaijan's national press. Reporters were given exclusive access to the plant's smart control rooms and digital storage systems, highlighting its automation and sustainability features. Funded through a combination of state budget support and 500 million euros in international loans from banks in South Korea, France, Germany, and Austria, the plant remains the largest project of its kind in Azerbaijan's non-oil sector.
Tensions between Georgia's government and the European Union have reached a new high. The European Parliament has issued one of its strongest statements yet, saying Georgia's path to the EU is effectively blocked. The ruling party quickly pushed back. Our Nini Nikolashvili has all the details.
Georgia's ruling party is pushing back after the European Parliament issued a strong statement declaring that country's European path is blocked unless the government changes its authoritarian course. The message posted on the Parliament's official platform X page says that it no longer recognizes the current government and emphasizes that the EU integration is suspended unless fair and free elections are held. In a sharp response, Parliamentary Majority Leader Dinaradze accused the EU of political interference. Posting on a Facebook, he said that this statement is a blackmail, claiming that this was deliberately timed to support opposition protests. Mamukam Dinaradze said that now it turns out that the issue was authoritarianism. Apparently, we need to copy Saakashvili and go to war with Russia and abandon our national values to get some positive statement, he wrote it on Facebook. Dinaradze dismissed criticism as a part of a coordinated campaign to weaken the government and to boost what he described as failed rally. The European Parliament, meanwhile, stood firm, stating that he supports the civil society and Georgian people and considers this government as incompatible with European values. This rare and direct language signals growing concern in Brussels about Tbilisi's political trajectory, putting even more pressure on the government ahead of upcoming local elections. It's Nini Nikolashvili, reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Joining us to unpack the latest messages from Strasbourg and Brussels, as well as Georgia's response, is George Mchedlishvili, Associate Professor at the European University, coming to us from Tbilisi. Welcome, George. Thank you so much for being here with us. Now, as things stand, the EU does not recognize the current government of Georgia. The bloc backed the protesters and opposition since the election in late 2024, and the ruling party has, in response, paused all EU accession activities. Now, with these latest messages, are Brussels and Tbilisi further away now than they were at the height of the protests?
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. Very unfortunately, so while I said about a month ago that relations between Georgia and European Union are it's nadir, but now the nadir lowered even further. So today they are almost at the breaking point, and this is extremely very sad. Again, so we can talk a lot, say, adjudicate the responsibility. I believe that both parties in this particular case were not judicious enough. They made some irresponsible statements. For instance, even though obviously, well, I myself pro-European, and as a citizen of Georgia, I benefited a lot from the visa-free policy, from the ability to travel to Europe, and from also free trade agreement, association agreement between Georgia and European Union. Generally, the presence of European Union is a boon, but sometimes the language of European bureaucrats could be construed as not supporting Georgia, but supporting certain political forces which are in contravention, which are today like fighting for political dominance with the Georgian dream. For instance, saying that they don't recognize the government, I think this is an overstatement. There are significant questions to the quality of elections that were held in October 2024. There were like some tweakings, there were serious imperfections, but branding these elections as illegitimate, I think this is a bridge too far, and this is generally like not right. On the other hand, so response of the Georgian authorities are sometimes so very undiplomatic. So they like present everything and in black and white. There is very little flexibility. So obviously there is a still thinning room for understanding and for bringing the relationship back on track. And I believe that both sides in this particular regard should be more flexible, well, including Georgian authorities, who again sometimes respond. It's like knee-jerk reaction. This is not a wise, this is not a diplomatic, this is not a response of a mature leadership.
What is the sentiment in the society among the general public on the back and forth with the EU now that even the visa-free travel for regular Georgians is also on the line?
Yes, indeed. You mentioned like regular Georgians because, well, the holders of the diplomatic and service passports, they do need visa now. So their visa-free travel was suspended a few months ago. Well, obviously, there is a frustration in sections of society, particularly these sections of society, these parts of society which regularly travel to Europe, for whom this is a newly found benefit. You know, human mind and human nature is hardwired in such a way they get used to good, normal things, because generally, well, obviously, kind of like introduction of visas, in my opinion, generally unnatural, state of affairs. There should be a freedom to travel to other countries in general. Now we have had it for 8 years, and it will be psychologically even extremely hard to go back to staying lines in an embassies. Of course, most of people who want to, who get the invitation will eventually get to the countries. But again, so it's like back to square one. Obviously, this is a regress. This is a backward movement, and it will be extremely disappointing. Many people feel very frustrated because of that.
Do you see any possibility for Georgia holding another election in order to be able to continue on its European integration path? Or if not, what would you say would be the alternative for the country?
So, again, so since the parliament, even though, well, in a very curtailed, in an incomplete parliament is functioning, even though there are many questions about its efficiency. So, but today it seems that because of the, I would say, lukewarm and very, with many reservations, the OSCE ODIHR conclusion is still could be interpreted as a positive, even though with many questions, even though with many reservations. So therefore, outright calling this election illegitimate now, I think it would be a wrong step. Therefore, well, it's really difficult to say so how to come to this election. I believe that certain policies and certain statements of the European Parliament, the European bureaucrats, could be modified and could be so more flexible and more diplomatic in this regard.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight.
Thank you.
Elsewhere, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called for international recognition of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Speaking at a ceremony in Nicosia marking the 51st anniversary of the Cyprus peace operation, Erdogan said the decades-long injustice against Turkish Cypriots must come to an end. He voiced full support for the two-state vision, urging the international community to accept what he called realities on the ground. The Caspian Seas water level has dropped to its lowest point ever recorded. Experts say that the northern shallow areas along the Russian and Kazakh coasts are undergoing the biggest changes. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
According to the Volga-Caspian branch of the Caspian Fisheries Research Institute, the drop in water level is primarily caused by a reduction in river inflow, most notably from the Volga River, which contributes around 80% of the Caspian's river runoff and approximately 64% of the total incoming water balance. Over the past 4 years, the annual flow of the Volga has ranged between 210 and 232 cubic kilometers, significantly lower than the long-term average. Experts also point to rising atmospheric greenhouse gas levels, which are driving temperature increases and accelerating water loss from the surface of both the sea and its feeder rivers. At the same time, growing water demand for irrigation, industry and municipal use is placing additional pressure on the rivers that supply the Caspian. The Caspian Sea is the world's largest enclosed body of water, fed by over 130 rivers, and its shoreline is shared by 5 countries, Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan and Iran. While the shrinking sea is a problem for all of them, experts warn that Kazakhstan could be hit the hardest if water levels keep dropping. Many fear that the Caspian could face the same fate as the nearby Aral Sea, located between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, which began drying up in the 1960s when its feeder rivers were diverted to irrigate cotton fields. According to projections by regional climate researchers, Central Asia may face serious water shortages as early as 2028. And for Kazakhstan, losing 20% of its share of the Caspian could have significant consequences for its growing population. Environmental activists say this is not just an environmental crisis, but also a humanitarian and economic challenge. They stress that solving these issues will require a comprehensive approach and strong international cooperation. Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ, Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and do stay tuned to AnewZ.